Hey, my friend, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and today's video is going to share with you the 5 main themes you might be experiencing right now around this period of the new moon happening on May 16th or 17th, depending on where you live, 2026. I'm going to break down the astrology into real nuts and bolts, take-home types of themes, things you might be experiencing and exploring and working through right now. But just to give you kind of a little sneak peek, this new moon is full of surprises. This new moon is full of opportunity for growth and transformation. And the real blessing, I would say that the deeper blessing with this new moon is you get to learn something new and awesome about yourself. It's a period of also self-discovery, realizing your true worth, realizing your true value, realizing your true power. Theme number 1, creating real stability. Right now, you might be noticing parts of your life that are unstable, or at least causing you to feel unstable, which is a very different thing. A lot of times, structurally, you're fine, but emotionally, not so much. Sometimes you are, in fact, living on unstable grounds, and that will amplify the emotions. And depending on where you fall in the spectrum, regardless, you might find yourself taking another look at what it really means to be stable. What would it take for you to feel safe and secure and to be able to kind of kick back and just straight up chill and really let go? What would it take? You know, your initial impression might be, well, I need a certain amount of money in the bank account. I need to know the kids are safe. I need to know this, that, and the other. But if you look deeper, you may have at least at times in your life had that, and you still found yourself worried, concerned, thinking a lot about the future. There's always an element of the unknown in life. And therefore, there's always a reason for the mind to become in a state of unrest, agitation, feeling unsafe, unstable. You don't know how things are going to go. This new moon might be bestowing you with some wisdom and reminding you that peace and stability is something that you can cultivate within yourself. And the good news about that, it doesn't require all the things in your outer life to play nice and to go the way you think they ought to go in order for that to happen. It's more stable, it's more grounding, and it works. It really, really does work. I remember there was years ago when we were in the process of moving to Sedona, and there was a lot going on. We had our entire garage filled up with furniture, some new furniture, some from the other house. The entire inside of the house is being gutted, and they're redoing the floors, the walls, taking down walls. It was crazy. And I remember how I noticed how on one hand it was super exciting. It was the first time I ever bought a house for my family, and it was like a nice accomplishment for me trying to provide for my family. And it was very exciting, very stimulating, very neat. The new furniture would come in the mail. We'd check the house every day, and the builders would have done this or that, and the walls are painted, the floors are down, and all these little, it's like Christmas every day, it kind of felt like. But what I noticed was how destabilizing that was. How, as exciting as it was and stimulating, it made me feel incredibly ungrounded and depleted, like my dopamine was getting spiked constantly. And I felt this very, very discontent in spite of really good things happening for me in my life. And what I did is I found a yoga mat that was in sight, and I went out into the front, the front driveway of the house. And I took my 2 young boys and we did some Wim Hof breathing. And as we were doing the breathing, after a round or two, I found myself with my eyes closed. And I realized right then and there that in those few moments, just sitting on the floor, on the hard concrete with my 2 boys, breathing, one of the most basic, fundamental things that we all can relate upon. That simple task of just being with my breath, being with loved ones, getting into my body. I felt more peace, I felt more stability, I felt more happiness than I had that entire time. And you might notice that as well. you might notice that even if you do get your ducks in a row in your life, with your career, with your housing situation, with your relationships, with your focus, your goals, your dreams, your ambitions, the direction you decided to go on, all these things, it's usually very, very temporary and subject to unexpected change. And your mind knows this, which is why it can never relax. And you might find yourself realizing that peace is not going to be had by figuring things out in your outer life. And it's available to you each and every moment, right here, right now. Theme number 2, divine timing. Not to be confused with your idea of perfect timing. Oftentimes those conflict very, very much. I'm saying divine timing. You might at times find yourself questioning this idea of divine timing altogether. Really suspicious. Is everything okay? Is everything really unfolding for my best interest? Because my gosh, it certainly doesn't seem that way on many levels. But what you'll find is that it is. It always is. And for example, I wanted to film this video for a couple of days, but I can't film them if I don't have the inspired ideas. I don't just come up with these. These are things that literally come to me, at random times throughout like the few days before I film them. And I'll write them down in my notebook. And once I have 5, I make a video. And it's getting down to the wire. I want to post this video tomorrow. And it's the afternoon, the day before. And I normally like to be off work for the day. So I was driving to my gym just a couple hours ago thinking like, you got nothing. You don't have even one bullet point for your video that needs to be filmed like hours ago. You're behind. And anyway, I was like getting stressed out about that temporarily. And I caught myself, so I decided just to kind of let it go and play some music. And as I was playing music, just out of the blue, it wasn't even anything in particular with the song. I just had one idea. And as I always do, I grab my phone and I kind of like send a little voice text to my phone and say, oh yeah, point number 1, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like point number 2, point number 3, point number 4, point number 5. Within about 1 minute, this entire video came to me just out of left field. And it turns out I didn't have to really stress out at all because I had my idea of timing. But if I would have forced it, this video would have been different, and probably a lot worse. It probably would have come off as forced, but now it comes off as I like them to, which is, at least to me, feels aligned and feels very inspired. And it came, as always, at the perfect timing. I had to go through what I went through this morning, which was not my best morning, just to say, in order to be able to be a recipient for these ideas. And a lot of times your roadblocks, your hiccups, your trials, your delays, your sense of stagnation is necessary to kind of set you up for divine timing. And what you might find during this new moon is you have periods where you're questioning the timing, you're maybe like getting annoyed with what I'm saying, thinking to yourself, this is not my experience at all, bro. And then you might have other times where you can't help but know it's perfect timing. In fact, right before I had that download, when I grabbed my phone, it was 12:12, which is like one of my numbers. It's one of my, like the 12:12 and 11:11 and 1 2 3 4 or 1 2 3 4. Those are like my prime synchronicities that normally when I see them, they kind of reassure me that I'm on track. It's okay. It's okay. I know things seem a certain way, Vic, but 12:12, bro, you're good. And it had that effect on me. And then the video came through. So divine timing is so efficient. It can kind of just sneak up on you when you least expect it and give you exactly what you need and then sort of recede off into the background as if it was never there in the first place. Number 3, building something stable. Point number 1 was more so about finding peace and stability within yourself. But as you do that more and more, which in your own way, I can almost guarantee you all will, you'll realize the futility of trying to achieve stability by getting things in order in your outer life. And you're going to find a deeper level of stability. But ironically and conveniently, what that will translate into is you building up your life situation in a more stable way. But this is not necessarily a time, and I think the astrologers out there will agree, of like rapid progress, like windfalls of cash falling into your lap, crazy opportunities just, coming out of left field. It's more so like slow and steady wins the race type of vibes. And by now you probably have at least something to be working on, and it might be taking longer than you'd like, but worthwhile, solid, long-lasting foundations oftentimes don't come all at once. And when it does come out all at once, it's oftentimes not stable. In fact, there's an amazing William Blake quote that says something along the lines of, "You can never soar too high so long as it's with your own wings." Something like that. And it's like, it's time for you to create a life of stability. One boring, mundane step at a time. A cool story that comes to mind I read in the book, The Autobiography of Will Smith, which is a fantastic book. Great read, by the way. Whether you might have your opinions on him, but he's a solid dude, in my opinion. And anyway, when he was a little kid, him and his brother came home from school one day, and his dad, who I think they call him Pops, said, "Guess what, guys? We're going to build a wall today." And he took him to his work, which I think he built refrigerators or something. So he had like a real big, like blue collar type of workspace. It wasn't like, they weren't like normal height ceilings. So a wall was like 15 feet high, a big wall. He wanted these like little kids to build. I think he was like 8 or 10 years old. And Will Smith in the book, he kind of jokingly talked about how his Poppy or Pops made them build this wall in the most old-fashioned, inefficient way. Mixing the mortar and the water and what do you call that stuff that goes in between bricks? Mortar, maybe, whatever it is. They had to mix it by hand, and literally brick by brick for months, almost a year. I think like 9 months it took them. They'd come home every day after school, and they'd go to the shop, and they'd spend like the remainder of the day building up this what they saw to be a pointless wall, which I think it was. And I think 9 months later, they finally finished this like massive wall built by these two little kids in that very old-fashioned way, brick by brick. And he said when he stood back and saw that wall, he realized why his dad made them do that. And it was for them to see that persistence, consistency, patience, hard work pays off. When they began, he said, the idea of that wall being finished seemed like it was a million light years away. Like it would just never happen. This is just impossible. This is too much for an undertaking. But anything you build brick by brick by brick becomes possible. You can do almost anything. Even if you're older, even if you're a little jaded from life, give it a decade. Where do you want to be at 10 years from now? Whatever it is, if you're willing to work for it and be consistent and do the work, no reason you can't get there. You can do anything in a decade, mostly. And now is the time to kind of start to build the wall, which is not as exciting as having the wall built for you, or you receive a check of inheritance and there's a wall just given to you. It's the mind wants that kind of thing, to win the lottery, these quick wins, quick promotions, whatever. But the soul values the brick by brick building, because there's something you get out of it beyond just the wall. Number 4, we would not have a successful transformative new moon if there was not an element of transformation. So what you might experience you might find that you're oscillating between periods of tension and pressure, and maybe even like angst and release, clarity, expansion, breakthrough. It's kind of one and the same. I think I shared this quote the other day, and I'll share it again because it's so relevant. Friedrich Nietzsche, he said, "One must have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." Pressure is required most of the time to get us out of our pattern way of thinking, to get us out of our comfort zone where all the magic can happen, to allow us to discover ideas beyond the limitations of only our memory of the past. We need this pressure. Then we start thinking in kind of creative ways, and we find creative solutions sometimes, and we get to cultivate these attributes of ourselves, like faith and patience and courage and trust and whatever your theme is right now. A lot of times we're not going to go out of a way to cultivate courage. And yet, how much more fulfilling would our life be if we had more courage? What if you had more courage? What would you do differently? How would you live differently? What would you have done differently in your life? What opportunities did you shrink away from that you could have just gone for? My daughter, I remember when she was a little kid, she was determined to learn how to rollerblade. And as the father, in my opinion, it was a little bit premature because she was real young. She was like 5, 6, and very uncoordinated, but she insisted. We got her the rollerblades. And as I thought, she put them on and just very ambitious, like just set off on them, and boom, collapsed, just fell. Brutal spill out, man. She was crying and I think she cut her leg or something. And I thought for sure that was it. But she kind of like, after she like wiped her tears, she stood up, she looked at me in the eyes and she said, again. I said, okay, you sure, Maya? She did that. Sure enough, one step, boom, boom, same thing. That happened probably like a half a dozen times. Eventually, I insisted we get her some elbow pads and knee pads and a helmet and all this stuff. And she just would not quit. Because she was so young, she had yet to learn even the idea of doubt. She had nothing but courage and determination, almost like a naive, distorted sense of what she could do. But you know what happened? It took her maybe about 30 to 45 minutes, and she was eventually going around, I wouldn't call it a neighborhood because we lived in a travel trailer at a KOA campground at the time in a fifth wheel, but she was going around the little pseudo neighborhood all by herself, and I was just sitting there watching, and she wasn't falling. She taught herself to rollerblade in about an hour at 5 years old, and she loved it, man. She never questioned herself for a second. So my point is, this tension, this pressure, this stress, whatever your problems are, I'm sure you have something you're wrestling with right now, something unknown, something you're in the process of, aligning or figuring out or understanding. That uncomfortable experience is what gives way to these life-changing attributes, such as courage, such as patience, such as faith, such as trust, such as compassion, such as forgiveness. I learned forgiveness, for example, by being wronged by someone in such a lopsided way that it was extremely difficult to be forgiving. I had a lot of reasons to justify my anger and my resentment, which of course led to sleepless nights. That was one other example of this pressure and this tension. But because I got so sick of living that way, I realized that I can't just stay mad, even if I feel justified. This is like doing me no good. And I had to go really deep within myself and really find real forgiveness, not just some idea of forgiveness. I had to actually like find it within myself, the ability to let it go and move on. And that tension taught me a very beautiful and valuable thing that I think all of us could use more of, me included. I'm not done learning forgiveness, by the way, but it's just an example. But a lot of times, people, they blame the astrology, or they wait passively for these situations to resolve themselves. But if you can be proactive and you can own your feelings, own your triggers, own even your life circumstance, there's always something to learn. There's always a virtue to cultivate. And eventually, yeah, things will probably resolve themselves in a sense on their own, as change always creates that effect at some point. But you could have just white knuckled that whole time and endured it, or you could have used all of that tension as a catalyst for breakthrough, growth, expansion of your consciousness, and the development of you just living a more virtuous life And finally, number 5, I saved the best one for last. In my opinion, the most important one. And it is just this one sentence. You are the source. This new moon can allow you to have like a leap in consciousness, a quantum leap in your consciousness by understanding that your entire life is essentially in your hands. I'll give an example. I had quite a breakthrough with this like a week ago, where I was finding myself just so resistant to certain aspects of my life that are like unclear, resistant to the unknown. And I was so desperately wanting some type of like sign or counsel or, insight or one little glimmer of clarity, please, God. And I tried. I took like a small dose of mushrooms and I just sat there and I laid in bed with an eye mask on and an earplug, just like demanding answers. Nothing came. 2 hours later, I was just so feeling so like hopeless, you might say. I found myself just sitting on my bedroom floor, just looking all like forlorn, just like feeling defeated by life. My wife noticed. She kind of slowly came in and she said, "What you doing, honey?" "I don't know, babe. I don't know what I'm doing," And she suggested she help me do a little breath work, and I did. And I did a lot of breath work. I did like probably a good hour and a half deep dive, a deep session, a lot of purging, a lot of release. And even after all of that, I felt kind of the same. But at the very end, I had this awareness that my attachment to thinking I need the answer is what was resulting in all of my problems were coming from that. And I realized that in my desperate attempt to know, that in itself, that desire was the problem, not that I didn't know. And I was temporarily identifying with this kind of desperate part of myself that once I expanded with the mushrooms and the breath work, I could see it like, oh, that's not me. I don't need to be like that. I'm holding on too tightly and it's causing me unnecessary stress. And there was this like logical, obvious sort of just like notion just to kind of let go and let it be. And in the end, it was a very humbling discovery to realize that I was the source of at least that day of struggle and problems. At the same time, parallel and sort of contained within that discovery was the awareness of, oh yeah, I am the source. And there's a sense of empowerment that comes with that. To knowing who you are not helps you know who you really are. And when you can kind of catch yourself in this way, you can really start to kind of step into your true identity, which is someone who is already all these things: courageous, trusting, faithful, powerful, capable, deserving. All these things are what you already are. In fact, my breathwork teacher would always, before each session, he would always invite everybody to come up with a one-word intention. He'd say, in one word, what would you like to receive from this ceremony? Maybe more love, more trust, more happiness, more courage, more faith. What? What do you want? Guidance, clarity, healing, you name it. One word. And we would like meditate and we'd think about it and we'd say, I want to feel more love. I want to feel more connected. I want to feel more guidance. I need answers, whatever, And it's great, awesome. But here's the thing. All of those things are already what you are. You don't need to receive any of them because you already possess them. It is your default setting. By definition, what you are at the core is the source of all of these things. Now, that's just something to say. It's either just words. I'm talking, you might have your own realization of that during this new moon with the tension. You might discover what you really are at the core. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. So I wish you all very well. Have an amazing new moon experience, my friends. Thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. Please like and subscribe. And if you got something out of this, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And also, if you'd like to join us in our next free monthly live transformation online session, say that 3 times fast. Once a month, my wife Pattie and I, or one of the other, will go live and we'll run a breathwork session. You know, recently we ran a QHHT past life regression. We run other types of workshops as well. It's completely free and just kind of an offering for the YouTube community here. And if you want to be a part of the next one, I'll leave a link down below. Go ahead and click it and put in your email and details, and we'll hope to see you at the next one. All right, thanks so much, my friends. Peace.